Today we're going to do something just a little bit different. We're going to talk about something that may or may not be a homunculus. Whether it is or whether it isn't may have to do with how we conceive of it. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get at how we conceive of things by seeing function and penetrating through function to see the astrological makeup behind it. And so that's what we're going to do. But first we have to prepare our consciousness, and we have to talk about a bad habit. Our humanity has come to have a very bad habit, and the name for that bad habit is materialism. And materialism has various different definitions. The most basic definition is a belief that everything that comes out of matter, rather than that everything comes out of spirit and is precipitated into matter. But the form of materialism that we're going to talk about this morning is the way we conceive of reality. And we conceive of reality way too much in terms of discrete material entities. We see the cosmos as being comprised of solid things. Solid things, and everything else is basically empty space. And because we have this materialistic conceptualization, it's easy to see a homunculus in the phalanges, because there's something that you can touch. In fact, there even have been mystical groups that have touched them. And they recognize, there used to be the mystery cult in northern Greece and in northern Thrace that were called the cult of Heracles of the Dactyls. And they chanted mystical poetry as they were touching their bones. And this is where the dactylic measure comes in poetry. But that's all very far aside from it. So the phalanges are something definite. But if we have something even just a little bit more subtle, it's difficult for our conceptology. Take something like water. We can feel water, and we can sort of see water, and we can taste it, not so much if it's distilled, but it doesn't have a solid consistency. And it doesn't have that solid consistency that we find security in. Hence, some people, if you put them in the water, they start panicking because they don't feel secure in it. We can analyze water chemically, but we really don't appreciate and know the nature of water, because it's always a little bit suspect, because it's not something definite to our materialistic consciousness. If we ask somebody what water is, aside from a chemical definition, we get some rather vague answers. It's difficult for us to keep the quality of water in our consciousness. Because if you put water in a glass, it takes the shape of the glass. If you pour out water, it doesn't have any shape. So that's, if you have security in objects that don't change, there's something always a little bit secure. And when we're talking about water, we're talking about something that's only a little bit more subtle than solids. The fact is that most of the cosmos is not solid. Even the liquids and the gases are a very small part of the cosmos. Space is not empty, as material scientists think, even though they have facts that they know otherwise. It's filled with energy. And interpenetrating that energy is desire, is thought, is spirit, all of which are actually more dense than solid matter. Density is a word that is difficult to conceive of, but there is more contiguity, more closeness. If we take an atom, quite a bit of the atom is space. Space filled with energy, but it's space. And the particulate part, the more solid part of an atom, is very, very tiny. But if you move into the etheric world, everything is much closer. It's a medium where everything is contiguous. And each realm that we go into spiritually that is more subtle, the greater the continuity there is. So that by the time we get to the realms of spirit, which to our consciousness is quite subtle, we're dealing with something that is always continuous, in every way continuous, and it is therefore very dense, whereas matter is hollow. In fact, the ancients even used to teach that matter as we know it in the cosmos is hollowed out of a state where everything is completely solid. But that's, again, we're far away from what we're talking about. So, we have all kinds of illusions. Solid matter is coarse. It seems to be heavy, and it's very much materialized, but it really is not dense. And that's what that's important to us, to begin to leave our materialistic conceptions and to live more in the truth of spirit. Because much more of our future is in subtle spiritual realms. Most people are not comfortable spending a lot of time in water. And even more so, to float in space. The astronauts really are pioneers, not because of all of the mechanical apparatus, but because they're getting used to a state where we're going to be suspended. If we're in water, there's always that fear that we're going to come down from the water, and when we hit, it's going to go boom. You know, that's the other side of the insecurity associated with materialism. So let's try to understand something which some people might not consider a homunculus. And in considering it, we're going to try to find the astrology in it and understand that everything that is an entity, that is a state of being, does have an astrological homunculus within it. And we're going to look now at what might be called an intellectual homunculus. Now, material science, when dealing with the substance that we're going to speak about, has a very different view from spiritual science. Material science sees it as a liquid, except when it's desiccated, it then becomes a crystal. And what we're talking about is blood. We're talking about the homunculus of blood. Now, spiritual investigators who have at least etheric clairvoyance claim that the blood is actually a gas, and that it is an etheric gas, and that the liquid components of it and the physical components are suspended in a gas. And that when it is released from the blood vessels, there is a tremendous release of energy, and then it becomes a liquid. So you can't fault material science for not knowing that it's a gas, because they don't even believe that ethers exist. And they're dealing with what they can see. So there is this discharge of energy. Other substances have a discharge of energy, like plant juices. I drink plant juices every day, and as soon as they're out of the cell walls, the etheric energy gets released. And I gulp down green juice and carrot juice and things like that just for the energy. Max Heindel used to drink fresh raw milk, especially when he was doing magnetic healing. When he was doing magnetic healing, he would give a charge from his own vital body, and to recoup that, he would take fresh raw milk. In fact, the ancients, if you read the Aeneid by Virgil, or if you read the Odyssey by Homer, both of them have episodes where when they want to contact entities that are still in the lower desire world and in their etheric bodies, they release blood. They take an animal and they make a trough and they let the blood run in the trough, and immediately all sorts of spirits come because they want to draw on that energy. They're earthbound and they want to come to that and get recharged. Now, both material science and spiritual science agree that when the energy is gone and even the liquid is gone, it crystallizes. And we're told in the Rosicrucian philosophy that each person's blood is unique and distinct, and this can be told by crystallizing. You look at the crystals of blood from one person versus those of another, and it is clear that there's a distinct signature to someone's blood, and that the blood of one person when crystallized is very different from those of the others. In fact, since the blood is a direct expression of the spirit, and the spirit is individuating more and more and faster all the time, there is getting to be more types of blood than the basic 4 that we know now. And, for example, the Rosicrucian philosophy teaches that in the future that we will not be able to do blood transfusions because people's blood will be so unique that they won't be able to exchange it. So there's this discharge of energy that comes about. By the way, I have a friend that he said, I'm not clairvoyant, but he has gone to where they practice blood sacrifice, and he has seen blood run onto a totem. And he said, I am not clairvoyant, but even I could see the entities coming and drawing the energy off of that freshly released blood. All right. Max Heindel used to like to say, he used to like to quote Goethe's Faust in saying that blood is a peculiar essence. And it's a peculiar essence because it is such a spiritual thing. All 3 attributes of the 3-in-1 spirit have a very important influence in the blood. The self, the spiritual ego, that is our divine being, functions directly in the blood. It directs the blood independent of the nerves. If we're digesting a meal, we have blood in our stomach. If I tune a musical instrument, my ears become bright red because the spirit is directing the blood toward the ears. And we know, for example, that a male erection is blood filling up porous glandular tissue. So, we can see that the spirit does work directly in the blood. The life spirit The second member of the threefold Trinity of our spiritual being has its secondary seat in the blood and the heart. Its primary seat is in the pituitary body, but it works through the blood and the heart. The pituitary body is the captain of all the endocrines. And all the endocrines, which are crystallizations out of the etheric vital body, they are not controlled by the nervous system. They work exclusively through the blood. The only endocrine gland that has a connection with the nervous system is the posterior lobe of the pituitary body, which Max Heindel knew before it was even stated by physiology, showing that the occultists are always way ahead of everyone else. The flow, the life of the blood, the etheric part of it, is a reflection of the life spirit. And it is that life spirit that drives the blood as much as the heart. The heart is a valve and it's a regulator, but there is as much of the driving of the blood by the spirit. Now this might sound very unconventional, but there is even, from materialistic physiology, there is proof of this. In the embryo, there is blood circulation. And there is blood circulation before there is a heart. And it is blood circulation that is not capillary action, and that it is not due to the effect of the mother. It is a fact that the blood is driven, and it is driven by the spirit, and that is what causes circulation. Now, it would be foolish to say that the heart doesn't have something to do with blood pressure and maintaining the flow of it, but that itself is run by the life spirit. It does have a regulator, but that regulator is its own private little nervous system. There is the sinoatrial I don't know what node, I believe they call it. It's a nervous node where it creates its own pacemaker, and so the heart has a mind of its own, or a brain of its own. The divine spirit, which is our deepest spiritual part, is also found in relation to the blood. It is a good way to understand the relationship of the life spirit to the divine spirit. If we look at the processes that take place in our body, those processes, those transactions, those interactions are all spiritual interactions. So that even if a person is lying in a coma and may be for 20 years, that individual is still having spiritual experience through the body. It isn't the same thing as being awake in the senses and being able to think things out, but in the physiological interactions, the spirit is still gaining experience and the spirit is still functioning. The production of red blood is done in the marrow of the bones. And the bones, being the most mineral part of the body, are a reflection of the divine spirit. The divine spirit came into being with the power and will to be by having to relate to physical resistance. We have the experience in our somatic nature first, and this is followed later by the awakening of spiritual ability. Experience first, spiritual understanding later. At least when we're involving, that's the order of things. So the bones are the most mineral, the most solid part of our body. And by reflection, they relate to the divine spirit. Now, the best way to understand this relationship is to read St. John's Gospel. It's mentioned numerous times in St. John's Gospel. I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. The Father being the focus of the divine Spirit, and the Christ, not Jesus, but Christ being the focus of the life Spirit. And the life Spirit, the light that we see with the spiritual eye, is a manifestation of the ever-invisible divine Spirit. The power of the divine Spirit determines the light and the life of the life Spirit. We're talking about something very rare, but we're talking about the existence of light and life and love on a spiritual level coming from being within a divine power that wills to be and is. This process is in miniature and in a very simple but a very important way replicated in the bones. The blood is a direct expression of the marrow. It's from the Father. So putting all of this together, we can see then that if the blood is the expression of life and spiritual being in the physical body, it is a result of something that's even more subtle, but something that is hidden and never seen. I guess the best and my favorite analogy is if you take a light bulb and hook it up to a storage battery, this is the relationship of the life Spirit to the divine Spirit. The storage battery is a black box. You can't see into it. It's impenetrable. But yet it has an invisible power in it. When you hook up a light bulb to it, that light bulb lights up, and the brightness of that light depends on the power that is within the battery. So it is a direct expression. To know me is to know the Father. And to know the light of truth is to know the pure being that is behind truth. And so that kind of expression takes place in the body, in the building of the blood. Now this is a process that is a very rapid process. There are several 100 million blood cells, and they don't live very long. I think they live about 4 months, 1/3 of the zodiac. We find the triples again in the cycle of the zodiac, and therefore they have to be renewed. Life has to always be new. It has to always be fresh. The red blood, the iron that is in the red blood is a rare and a scarce commodity. So the red blood cells die in the primary node of the lymph system, which we call the I'm tired this morning and I'm not thinking clearly. The spleen. The red blood dies in the spleen, and then the iron is recycled. And it's recycled quite swiftly, so that every second 2 million red blood cells are built. So that in the time that I said that sentence, each person in this room made 10 million red blood cells. We're living inside of a miracle. And this is going on all the time. The study of our body and to understand, just to appreciate in a simple way how well it functions, even if we're ill or if we're crippled or whatever, it's functioning well, and the Spirit is learning a lot. And we get to experience all of this, and it goes on rapidly. And this does this every day that we're alive. How many seconds are in a day? And if there's 2 million new cells built every second, that's a phenomenal amount of activity. That's productivity. I suppose it even gets sped up if you drink coffee. But alright, this is the process between the divine spirit and the life spirit. Now we said just a few minutes ago that the self works directly in the blood. Now we can see that the blood is almost a direct experience or a direct expression of the threefold spirit in the body. The state of the blood is the state of the body. All of the food, all of the waste, all of that is transported through the blood. The blood takes the nutrients to every part of the body, or almost every part of the body. The cerebrospinal fluid also takes nutrients to parts of the brain and nervous system, but it gets the food from the blood. It doesn't have a direct relationship to the producing of the food or to the producer of the food. The blood transfers or transports all of the waste from the cells and from the organs. Gets rid of them through the lungs, the kidneys, the sweat glands, and so on. It supplies all of the oxygen for metabolism to every part of the body. It carries carbon dioxide away from every cell in the body and releases it as a poison through the lungs. So we can see that everything that is essential depends on the blood. We like to think about our nervous system and the things that we can do with our mind and reflexes and things like that, but it's a question of which is more important, the nervous system ruled by the human spirit, the thinker, or the blood, the circulatory system, which is ruled by the life spirit. This is a big debate, you know. Some people think that you're dead when you're blood dead, that is, when you're heart dead. Some people think you're dead when you're brain dead. You can actually tell something about the character of people and what they believe is essential to life by seeing whether they believe a person brain dead is really dead. See, they place that much attention on waking consciousness, or that much value on waking consciousness. Another function of the blood is active participation in regulation. It does a lot of regulation. First, it does it through the hormones. All of the hormones are dumped into the bloodstream, and they communicate with each other. We won't have time to go into it, but the endocrine system is an astrological homunculus also, but it is a planetary astrological homunculus, so that if you look at each of the endocrine glands, and if you see it in its hyperactive state, such that, for example, you have someone who is a high thyroid person, you have a thyroid personality. And if you look at the characteristics of a thyroid personality, and you look at the characteristics of a dominantly mercurial person, you can see very clearly that that the thyroid is ruled by Mercury, or Mercury is ruled by the thyroid in the body. And the same thing with each of the other endocrine glands, that if you have a highly pineal type of person, somebody like a poet or a musician or somebody like that with that rare kind of sensitivity and that poetic kind of genius, you have a Neptunian person. And therefore you can see that Neptune rules the pineal gland. The pituitary, on the other hand, leads to those people that have the deer-like soft eyes and are very receptive mystics, and they have sort of an eerie quality about them. So you can see that the pituitary body is ruled by Uranus. And so each of them is a part of an astrological homunculus that is related to the planets and not to the signs. Now, androgens are consolidations out of the ethers, because our physical body is taken care of by the etheric vital body. When we go to sleep because the vital body has been depleted of energy, and it withdraws, and it leaves the physical body in a somnambulistic state, and it gets replenished in the inner worlds. This is what sleep really is. So we can see that the regulation and even the growth of the dense physical body is due to the ethers. And so what we're talking about when we are talking about the endocrine system, we're talking about specializations of the ethers that activate, various activities in the body. For example, the life ether is responsible for all sexual reproduction, and that includes cell division. And so when it is time for that function of the life ether to come into play, it works through the pituitary body, and the pituitary body sets things in motion, and then you have rapid growth, such as we have between ages 6 and 14, for example. We shoot up like weeds, so to speak, which is true because we're in a plant-like state when we're in that second septenary period of our life. We're living in pure vitality, and that is, again, controlled by the androgens. All right, so what we're talking about is functions of the blood. The blood regulates in other ways. It regulates the pH, the acid-alkaline of the body is maintained through the blood. It is a moderator in many, many different ways. It is a protector. The second attribute of the Spirit is known as the Savior, as the protector, and the blood does that. We have the white blood cells, and we have the transport of antibodies, and all of those things come from the blood. The blood prevents fluid loss by clotting and scarring and scabbing and all of those kinds of qualities. It protects us against toxins. So we get another idea of what the blood is in that way. Now let's try to get to what we're trying to get to all together in this talk, and that is we want to be able to get down a little bit more to the nitty-gritty of what the blood is and see how it is an astrological homunculus. And we're going to develop that homunculus as a result of study. And it's going to be a very fleeting thing that we do, and that fleeting activity is only to pique your curiosity, because we're assuming that everybody wants to become a healer. And knowingly healing is much better than unknowingly healing. And so we're trying to develop an understanding through astrology of not only the blood, but all of physiology, so that we can work better as healers. Because it's obvious, as we just saw, that all of the activities that take place in the physical body are spiritual activities. And if we understand in somebody's consciousness what attitudes they are mismanifesting, we can see how that's going to affect physiological function. Or you can go the other way around. You can say, well, there's something wrong here, that this person takes on water and holds too much water and doesn't release it. And from that we can work backward to understanding something in the spirit and come to understand what needs to be healed, so that we can work from both the bottom up by changing conditions in the body, and from the top down by changing things in the soul nature of the individual. Now, there are different ways of classifying the constituents of the blood. Modern physiology has only two basic constituents to the blood: the fluid part, which is the plasma, and everything else it calls formed matter. That's only two things. In the Rosicrucian philosophy, the distinction is made between three things in the blood. The plasma, which is the fluid part, and the part that is live, the red blood corpuscles. And then everything else that is the formed matter still has the same name. It's called fibrin. It just makes a distinction that the red blood cells are something different than the fibrin. So, Max Heindel was trying to talk about the most basic constituents of the blood. We're going to look at a little bit at most of the major constituents of the blood and see how they universally are associated with the zodiac. All right. And in this, again, this is not complete. This is only, what do they call those, an appetizer or something like that to whet your appetite to study and understand more of this yourself. Now, the classification of the components of the blood as used by Max Heindel is very helpful for getting at the blood as a homunculus. Since the blood is a fluid, it is ruled by water signs. Gases are also fluids, and there's gas in the blood, but the gas in the blood is of two distinct types. There is the carbonic gas, and there is the oxygenated gas. You know, the red blood cell gas. And they both function differently. You know that when oxygen is taken to all of the cells so that they can metabolize, one mechanism is used for that, but when the carbon dioxide is taken away from the cells, it's a totally different thing the way it works. The way the oxygen works is through a weak bond. There's a weak bond between the ferric compound and the oxygen, and so the oxygen is taken from the lungs and is weakly bonded with the red blood cells, and it gets carried to where it is needed, and then the cells are charged in such a way that they can take the oxygen away from that weak bond. But when carbon dioxide is released by the cells, it doesn't bond. It's chemically impossible for it to bond. And so it is a matter of gas pressure. And there are laws about it. It's very clear. Gas pressure, how much carbon dioxide can be dissolved in the blood. The physiologists go right into the physics of gas pressures and things like that. So the fluid that is the gas is not always a gas. In some cases it is a compound, and in some cases it is a dissolved gas. There are three watery signs in the zodiac: Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. Cancer, obviously, being the cardinal, the active water sign, rules the plasma. Like the streams, it carries everything through the body. Cancer also rules the water content of the blood that we spoke of earlier. Since the blood is a solution and Cancer rules the quality of salt water, the oceans, the amount of sodium ions is determined by the Cancer part of the blood. If you taste blood, it tastes salty because it has all of the sodium ions. When we move to the second water sign, we come to Scorpio. And Scorpio is co-ruled by Mars. And we're told in the Rosicrucian philosophy that the hemoglobin, the Marshall part, the red blood cells are ruled by Scorpio. But Scorpio is also a sign of wasting. So all of the waste, it's amazing, that the blood can become septic. That's actually what blood poisoning is called. But the same stream that carries all of the food and carries all of the oxygen, that same stream carries all of the waste material. A lot of cities would like to be able to have their water lines and their sewer lines hooked up together. It's a lot less piping that way. But the way the blood works, this is possible. Scorpio is also a destroyer. So the killer lymphocytes and all of those things are ruled by Scorpio, and probably even to some extent by the other Mars sign, Aries, for antibodies. But Scorpio basically is the anti-sign of the zodiac. Its first reaction to anything is negative, you know. Coming now to Pisces, the fibrin, the stringy part of the cells that is important for clotting. Now this is really fascinating, the way this all works out. Pisces, as we know, is a sign that's inclined toward alcoholism. And we all know that you lose brain cells every day. I think it's something like either 10,000 or 10 million brain cells die every day, and most of them are not regenerated. But if you take one shot glass of whiskey or one glass of beer or a goblet of wine, in one dose like that, you kill as many brain cells, as you do in a whole day's worth of thinking. So every time you take a drink, you're taking one day off of your thought life at the other end of your life. And it's interesting the way this works. Pisces is a sign of alcoholism. And the way this is accomplished is when alcohol gets in the bloodstream, it causes the fibrin to be more stringy. And when the fibrin is more stringy, it doesn't go through the tiny capillaries in the brain. And when it doesn't go through the tiny capillaries in the brain cells get starved of oxygen and they die. And the way I'm mentioning these as examples because by that you can tell whether you're accurate to the homunculus. It's not, that you're not just speculating wildly, but that this is something you can test out. It's not just enough for Maxine to tell us that the fibrin is ruled by Pisces, but when we see how the fibrin works and what the result of it is in our physiology when abused, we can say, wow, he really was right. There's much more that he never had the time to tell us all. And this is the beautiful thing about this. If you learn something, and if you know something, and if something comes to you intuitively, that is always open to being tried or to being challenged. And the spirit, if it's the truth, it doesn't mind being challenged. And in the process of trying the spirit, trying to see whether this is true or not, you actually learn much more. So Jupiter is the preserver. It holds all things together. Neptune is the co-ruler of Pisces, and it rules intoxication. And we just talked a little bit about how all of that works. Now this is the basic part of the homunculus that was given to us by Max Heindel. Now let's try to carry it out through the other 9 signs of the zodiac. Let's look first at the air signs, the other fluid signs. We have Gemini. And Gemini is the sign of polarity. It's polarized. And that is actually how the blood oxygen works. It's a process of the blood being charged positive or the blood being charged negative. It involves exchanges. Gemini is the sign of exchanges. So that there is an exchange that when the oxygen is gone, this allows the blood to be able to take on and to absorb into it the carbon dioxide. So we can see then that the exchange rate in the blood, which there are physiological ways that you can measure, is indicated by Gemini. Now, Libra is the sign of balance. And Libra is the center of the zodiac. Things start with Aries, the turnaround point at the center of the zodiac is at the beginning of Libra. And Libra is the sign of balance. And everything in the physical body, I have a whole big long list of them, but the whole body is a combination of very delicate balances. It is held together by all kinds of balances, and the blood itself has all kinds of balances in it. One of them is the acid alkaline, the pH of the blood. Another is the sugar insulin. There are at least 5 or 6 major balances within the bloodstream, and afflictions, for example, in Libra would indicate imbalances. They might indicate some kind of organic weakness also, or in some organ or system in the body, but that it has to be also in the blood. Aquarius, the final air sign, has always been associated with the general circulatory system. The opposite sign is Leo, and the heart in the center of the circulatory system, and all of the whole circulatory system put together is Aquarius. It's sort of like the sun and the solar system. The sun is the center, and everything is the source of all of the power, and everything relates to it. And then you have this huge, big electromagnetic field, gravitational field around it. And those fields, especially what is called electromagnetic, are what are associated with Aquarius. Now, the Venus circulatory system is ruled by the Venus circulatory system is ruled by Venus, and the arterial circulatory system is ruled by Jupiter, and the exchanges again in between are ruled by Mercury, which gives us even further insight into brain death. All right, the Aquarius rules the ethers. And so the gaseous component of the blood that resonates to Uranus is indicated by Uranus in our homunculus. One of the expressions of the etheric vital body in the physical body to accomplish physical ends are enzymes. And enzyme activity and the ability to work with enzyme function in the body are ruled by Aquarius. Aquarius is a fresh, vital kind of sign, and that's what the enzymes are to us. All right, as we go on, we have less time, so we'll become more and more fragmentary. We have 4 minutes left to finish all of this. Aries, turning now to the fire signs. Aries rules temperature, which is a measurement of intensity. And the 2 martial signs are the most intense signs. The Aries and Scorpio, Scorpio is high pressure intensity. Now, Aries rules the head. And the head in our body is a great big radiator. And the way it is, a lot of body temperature is maintained because of the head, because we tend to build up a lot of heat in our body from metabolism. And the way it works is that the spirit knows that brain cells, nervous cells, die easily, and they don't regenerate easily. So the brain is such a fragile mechanism that there is more blood per cell that goes to the brain than to any other part of the body. And it does that so, there's actually a circle of blood there, so that there's always, right in the center of the brain, there's a great big circle that's always filled with fresh blood. It's because you can't be without blood, but for a very short time without brain cells dying. In fact, the brain is one of the only places in the body where for some very vital cells, there is more than one route to get to that cell by the circulatory system. The result of it is, if there's a lot of blood in the brain, and the blood cells in the brain do not contract. That's different also from all the rest of the body. So you got all this blood flowing around in the brain, and nothing to close it down. This means that heat dissipates out of the head. It shows one of the functions of hair, to keep some of the heat in to a certain extent. And for those who wear caps, there is some justification for that. I hate to say it because I hate caps. All right. Then we have the second fiery sign is Leo, which rules the heart, which is the central regulator. It is for directing the blood. It is for increasing the pressure of the blood. It's interesting in this respect, general heat, not temperature, but general heat is ruled by Leo. The heart is the warmest organ in the body. It's just, it's just all the way these things all tie together. It's just fantastic. Quickly moving on to Sagittarius, the heat in the body is a product of metabolism. And the metabolism is a Jupiter Sagittarius thing. Sugars are ruled by Venus, and they burn very fast. But more heat is developed by burning fats and oils. This is why people who go to, Eskimos have lived for years on primarily fat. And people who go up to the Arctic or down to the Antarctic and they're there for long periods of time consume huge amounts of butter. Because it burns, it doesn't burn, like if you're in the tropics and you can eat, you can take light sugars like and eat fruits and you can thrive that way. You can't do that when you need a lot of body heat. There's another part of it is, so that all of the fats in the body are ruled by Jupiter, and there's one particular lipid that is important. There are two sources, one being external from food, and one is it is generated by the liver. And it is generated by the liver to be a lubricant for all of the blood vessels. And if we didn't have that lubricant, the blood vessels are very tough things. They would be broken down quickly. And that lubricant is cholesterol. On the other hand, if we don't use the liver-generated cholesterol and we take in other forms of cholesterol by indulgence, which is a Jupiterian thing, we have problems with our arteries. So you can see that this homunculus works out very, very nice. If we turn now to the earth signs, we get back to the sugars again. We're talking about blood viscosity. People who eat rich diets, the kinds of high-starch diets, very flavorful diets, have a higher blood viscosity. And that blood viscosity is ruled by Taurus. Taurus is not so likely to become a fruitarian, for example. Now, balance, we said, is ruled by Venus in the other Venusian sign, Libra, but the blood sugar level is itself, not the balance of it, but the blood sugar level is determined by the Taurus side of Venus. The mineral content of the blood is ruled by the earthy signs, particularly Virgo and Capricorn. In the circulatory system, in the blood vessels, there are all kinds of receptors. And these receptors determine everything from blood pressure in venous blood when the blood gets pumped back to the heart, to the oxygen receptors. All of these receptors are ruled by the discriminatory Virgo part of the blood, or of the blood system, so to speak. Organization is always ruled by Capricorn and by Saturn. And the organization of the blood, which to most people is not easily noticed, except to pathologists who see it when when the organization is disturbed and it's not as it should be. But the organization of the blood is usually invisible until it is crystallized. And that the relationship between organization and crystallization is ruled by Capricorn. All right, we have exactly taken our time, and so let's end by talking by saying the Rosicrucian prayer. O God, increase our love for Thee, so that we may serve Thee better from day to day. Let the words of our mouths and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in Thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. As you can see, this is sort of slapdash. You only have so much time. Hope that we got some ideas that, I'd like to see enthusiasm. And I'd like to see more people studying. I've even thought of having astrophysiology classes, but I'm not quite ready for that yet. Remember to sign up if you're going to dinner tonight. There's a nice dinner this evening at Elizabeth Ray's house, and the price is right. So if you're going to come, sign your name.
Yeah. I hope you all. She's cooking today, so tell her now.